A little bit of scaredness in regards to that, and that affects us because the bookings are down because of it.
Debt can't rob Greece of its beaches and vistas, but the country wishes you were here.
Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, let's get some contrasting views of what's going on in Europe. I'm joined from Athens by the Greek communist politician Liana Kanelli, and from Frankfurt by a chief economist with a major organisation there, and formerly Barclays chief economist in Europe, Torsten Poleit. Very good evening to you both. Liana Kanelli, tell me what the Greek people believe they're going to be voting for in this general election next month. Are they voting to stay in Europe, to get out of Europe, or just to survive?
Look, this country paid very, very hardly the idea of a referendum. And they feel, and they're going to vote again, with a pistol in their head, being blackmailed after 10 years in the Eurozone. We've got 5 out of these 10 years in a dreadful recession. Sometimes other Europeans cannot understand that a nation and its people cannot plan the future if you cannot plan your own personal life for the next few weeks or next few months. So austerity measures, it's not only something that creates the feeling of a war, that we are in the middle of it, but also despair, because Eurozone ends up to be a nest where we have to be, that it's turned out to be a prison. Now, we have to reconsider the whole situation. And it's not only the memorandum, it's the European Union itself. It wants to melt populations, melt cultures, recreate an area, and then traffic the working class and the people in a way that it happened about 300 years ago.
Let me bring in Torsten Poleit. If, as Liana says there, the Eurozone is a prison for the Greeks, is it time for the powerhouses in Europe, like Germany, to let them go, to free them from the Eurozone and to remove them from the Euro?
Well, I think...
Let me start by saying that, of course, the Greek people have to blame first and foremost the political elites who have overspent for decades, have spent other people's money, have heaped up huge amounts of debts, and this is where the problem lies. Looking forward, of course, we need a solution, and I think the final vote should indeed be with the people in Greece to decide whether or not to remain in the euro area. Let me say, as an economist, I'm not so sure whether getting out of the euro area is really the first option for Greece, because you would have to think about what would be the consequences. It may be even harder with a new drachma, a new currency, which is issued by basically a corrupt government, to bring about the necessary reforms. But as I said, the final vote has to be with the people in Greece.
Liana Kanelli, how do you think the Greek people will vote? They seem very confused about what is best for their future.
Look, I think that the only thing that can come out of the election is the feeling that there is no future in this union. It's a wolf's nest. And it's atrocious in the 21st century, with all this technological evolution in the world, being in the Eurozone as a rich country, ending up an impoverished country, blackmailed. Look, if they want to throw us out of the Eurozone, are we prepared for that? When we were invited in the Eurozone and were accepted in the Eurozone, didn't they know how the Greeks work? Eurostat says that we are one of the most hardly working people in Europe, and yet we can survive over Bulgarian salaries and Pakistani wages. And this is not for the good of Europe. We import everything, and we had a corruption that was known in the European Union, which is corrupted itself. Because when you create a union of big money, and then you let people die in the 21st century, cutting schools, cutting medical expenses, then selling the sun only to pay the debt, when you have a currency that you cannot, not even print, not even control, and you are totally controlled, how can you be rich as a country? We are not in Holland. Even Holland starts having problems now.
Let me bring in Torsten Poleit here. Torsten, if Liana Canelli, if you believe her line there, she says that really Europe knew what to expect of Greece when they invited them into the Eurozone. Do you think now we're starting to see perhaps the folly, the mistakes of the Eurozone coming through eventually years after its formation, that this group of countries simply couldn't stand together as one unity?
Indeed, Greece is only one trouble spot in the euro area of the 17 countries. We have other candidates. Spain, Portugal, even Italy has been hit by failing investor concern about the fiscal situation in that country. Of course, most countries, including Germany, haven't played by the rules, namely adhering to the requirements in the Maastricht Treaty to keep down deficits, to refrain from heaping up ever greater amounts of debt. There was ignorance of these important which should have safeguarded a successful European integration. And I would say you're absolutely right. We have to see that other countries are running into deep trouble. And the policy recommendations are now spending more, making more deficits, printing up ever greater amounts of money. And that is, of course, a recipe for disaster. We did that in Germany in 1923, trying to balance the federal budget with printing up ever greater amounts of money. And as an economist, I can only warn that these policies will be continued. I think the most important issue is now to seek debt relief for many countries. The debt burden has become too high. The people in these countries are no longer willing or able to repay the debt which has been heaped up by generations before. And so there will be we need actually a further debt relief program, including Greece.
There's a little bit of breaking news I'm just seeing on the wires here that, Liana, I'm sure will be interested in. The Greek government has just denied that Eurozone officials have recommended that member countries prepare for Greece's possible departure from the currency bloc. So the Greek government saying no, they're not expecting to get thrown out. But clearly there is a great depression has settled over Greece at the moment, Liana Canelli. Do you see a way forward? Do you see a way out of it?
Yes, I'll give you an idea. And I think we've been, throughout history, in many ways, revolutionary ways, gotten out of difficult situations. And we've given examples to people how even a big defeat can be a win at the end. I'll give you an example. In the same situation, like 10 million Greeks live now, there are 10 million Germans that have to survive over mini jobs of 400 euros. There are Englishmen that live under these conditions. There are millions in Italy or in Spain or in Portugal that they live under poor conditions. You can't design the future without people. When we speak about life, we cannot devaluate life and depend on a currency. It's like thrones. The price, if it's human lives, it cannot succeed. It's not going to be a European Union. It's going to be Europe. And we have an experience in Europe of blood spent so that people can be happy and survive. The working class throughout Europe loses things that we gained after a century of fighting. You don't have to be a left or a communist to understand that if you lose the only capital one human being can have, which is work, then you cannot believe that growth is a white-dressed lady coming to Athens airport, start giving people money because Germany decides to say yes to the proposition of Eurobonds. This is not growth, and this is not popular economy.
We must thank you both very much there. Greek politician Liana Kanelli and chief economist for DeGrussa Goldhandel, Torsten Poleit. Very interesting talking to you both. Thank you very much for your views.